Have you ever caught yourself smiling when your heart was breaking, nodding in agreement when your instincts were screaming no? If so, you're not alone. Many of us have been trained, sometimes from a very young age, to make ourselves acceptable, agreeable, and easy to be around. But while these habits might keep the peace on the outside, they can quietly fracture something essential inside. What begins as kindness or diplomacy can over time evolve into a pattern of self-erasure. We tell ourselves we're just being nice. We avoid conflict because it feels easier. We say yes out of guilt, fear, or obligation, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, we begin to betray ourselves, one small compromise at a time. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, believed that the self is not something to be edited for social approval. Instead, it is something to be uncovered, integrated, and lived authentically. When we over-identify with the version of ourselves that everyone else wants, the friendly one, the accommodating one, the never-a-burdened one, we begin to drift further and further from who we truly are. The real tragedy? This kind of self-abandonment doesn't make a sound. There are no bruises, no visible signs, but the effects are deeply felt. You may start feeling tired all the time, not just physically, but emotionally. You might sense an invisible emptiness, a quiet frustration you can't quite explain. This is the soul's way of signaling that something essential has been left behind. The cost of chronic people-pleasing is subtle but corrosive. Your desires get blurry, your decisions become automatic. You begin to live reactively, not intentionally, constantly adjusting to other people's needs while ignoring your own. Eventually, you may reach a point where you don't even remember what you want. And in that moment, you haven't just disappointed yourself, you've disconnected from yourself. This isn't a call to be selfish or unkind. It's an invitation to reclaim your center, because your presence is not valuable only when you're agreeable or useful. You matter even when you say no, even when you have boundaries, even when your truth is inconvenient to others. The truth is, you cannot live fully if you're constantly shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. So if you've been living in the shadows of your own life, always adjusting, always available, maybe now is the time to pause and ask, when did I start believing that being accepted was more important than being authentic? The answer to that question might not come quickly, but asking it might be the first real act of self-loyalty you've made in a long time. We all wear masks. There's the version of you at work, the one with friends, the one with family, and sometimes even the one you show on social media. These roles aren't inherently false. They help us function, relate, and navigate a complex world. Carl Jung called this psychological adaptation the persona, a kind of social mask we wear to engage with society. But there's a quiet danger in the persona. The danger isn't in wearing it. The danger is in forgetting that it's a mask at all. When we become overly identified with the role we play, we begin to mistake it for our true self. And that's when things begin to fracture internally. The persona is meant to be flexible, a bridge between our inner world and the external one. But when it hardens into a permanent identity, we begin to live according to expectation, not essence. When we become less active in essence together, we begin to live according to expectation, not essence. We laugh when we don't feel joy. We stay calm when we're quietly seething. We're agreeable even when something deep inside says no. Over time, this disconnect becomes unbearable. Why? Because no matter how polished the persona is, it can never replace the real self. And when the real self is ignored long enough, it begins to rebel. First in subtle ways, discomfort, fatigue, emotional numbness. Later, through more dramatic signals, anxiety, depression, sudden outbursts, a haunting sense of emptiness. You might look in the mirror and no longer recognize yourself, not because your face has changed, but because you've lost the spark behind the eyes. The tragedy of over-identifying with the persona is that you become a performance, not a person. You manage appearances, you anticipate what others want, you rehearse your responses, but inside you're growing distant from your real desires, needs, and truths. And ironically, from the outside, everything seems fine. People may praise your reliability, your kindness, your composure. But inside you know you're operating on autopilot. You're living a life that feels scripted, like you're stuck in a role that no longer fits, yet you're too afraid to walk off the stage. Jung warned us, when the mask becomes the face, the soul begins to suffer. The antidote is not to discard the persona entirely, that would be reckless. We still need it to participate in life, but we must remember, we are not the mask, we are the one behind it. So how do you begin reconnecting with that deeper self? Start by noticing the moments you feel inauthentic, the times you say yes too quickly, the way your smile tightens when you're exhausted. These are not just habits, they are clues, small signs pointing back to the person you've forgotten. And from there, with awareness, comes the invitation to live more honestly, not perfectly, not without friction, but in alignment with your truth, even if that truth is messy, even if it disappoints others. Because nothing, not praise, not perfection, not approval, is worth more than your own soul. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. It's not caused by overwork or physical strain. It comes from living every day disconnected from who you really are. At first it feels like a little tension, a vague discomfort. You say yes to something small even though you'd rather not. You ignore a boundary, suppress an emotion, bite your tongue to keep the peace, no big deal. Or so it seems, but then it happens again, and again, until this quiet dissonance becomes your normal. Carl Jung warned that when we abandon our authenticity to be liked, accepted, or praised, we're not just making social compromises, we are, on a deeper level, fragmenting the psyche. The self gets pushed into the background, while a constructed version of us, the pleasing, polished, agreeable persona, takes center stage. You might still look like yourself on the outside, but inside you start to vanish. People often describe this as a kind of fog. You don't know what you want anymore. You struggle to feel inspired. Decisions that once felt intuitive now seem paralyzing. It's not burnout from doing too much. It's burnout from constantly betraying your inner truth. The voice inside that once said, "This matters to me," gets drowned out by another voice that whispers, "Will they like me if I say this?" Over time, your emotional compass becomes warped. Instead of asking, "Is this right for me?" you ask, "Will this upset anyone?" Instead of moving from desire, you move from fear. Fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, fear of being labeled difficult or selfish. And ironically, the more you try to be everything to everyone, the more disconnected and invisible you feel. This is the slow erosion Jung spoke of. A soul that fades beneath the weight of constant accommodation. And it doesn't just affect your emotional life, it leaks into your relationships, your work, even your body. You might feel tired all the time but unable to rest, anxious but unsure why, stuck in a life that technically works but feels spiritually bankrupt. The truth is, we are not designed to live in contradiction forever. At some point, the inner self begins to protest. Sometimes it's quiet, through vague discontent or restlessness. Sometimes it's louder, through emotional breakdowns, panic attacks, or depressive spirals. But always the message is the same: you can't live like this anymore. And while that realization is painful, it's also a turning point. Because that ache inside you, the one you've tried to silence with productivity, perfectionism, or pleasing, is not a flaw, it's a message, a signal that the life you're living is out of alignment with the truth of who you are. So if you've been wondering why everything feels off, even though things look fine from the outside, you're not broken. You're being called back to yourself. The path ahead isn't about becoming someone new, it's about reclaiming someone old, someone you were before the world told you who to be. And that someone? They're still in there, waiting for you to stop pretending and start listening. On the surface, everything may seem fine. You smile, you show up, you handle your responsibilities. To others, you're reliable, composed, maybe even admirable. But underneath the calm exterior, there's a storm brewing. And it's not one caused by external stress. It's a conflict between two opposing forces inside you. On one side is the ego, the conscious part of your mind that seeks control, approval, and social harmony. The ego wants things to stay predictable. It wants to be liked, respected, and validated. It does everything it can to keep the mask, the persona, in place. On the other side is the unconscious, wild, symbolic, and unfiltered. It doesn't care about appearances, it cares about truth. Carl Jung believed that when the ego strays too far from the totality of the psyche, when it overfunctions to maintain a social image, the unconscious compensates. It pushes back, sending signals to bring the system back into balance. But the unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symptoms. You might feel a creeping anxiety that doesn't seem to have a clear cause, or an irritability that surfaces over small things. You may start having strange, vivid dreams, being chased, trapped, silenced, or perhaps your body begins to protest, tight chest, headaches, chronic fatigue. These aren't random. They're not weaknesses. They're messages. The unconscious is trying to say, you've abandoned something essential, come back to yourself. And the more you ignore these signals, the more you suppress your needs, mute your emotions, and overperform for others, the louder the unconscious becomes. Sometimes it shows up as burnout, sometimes as impulsive behavior, sometimes as a sense of emptiness that no achievement can fill. It's like a civil war inside your soul, the ego desperately trying to maintain the mask, and the unconscious desperately trying to tear it off. This war is exhausting, and most tragically, it's invisible. No one sees the battle. You're praised for being calm, for handling things so well. But no one sees that you're crumbling inside, that your peace is performative and your smile is a survival strategy. The longer this conflict continues, the more disconnected you become from your own vitality. You're not living, you're maintaining. You're not choosing, you're reacting. But here's the paradox. This discomfort is also your salvation. It's the psyche's way of waking you up. Because the real you, the deeper, untamed you, is still alive beneath the mask, and it's fighting not to destroy your life, but to reclaim it. So if your nights are restless, your days feel hollow, and your emotions no longer make sense, pause, breathe, listen. That inner chaos may not be a breakdown, it may be a breakthrough, the moment your soul begins demanding to be seen again. Not all souls break at the same threshold. Some people can say no without guilt. They can tolerate conflict, speak their truth, and hold their boundaries, even if it means disappointing others. But for others, even the idea of disapproval feels unbearable. According to Carl Jung's theory of psychological types, one group is particularly vulnerable to these. The extroverted feeling type. These individuals aren't just good at reading a room. They're wired to prioritize harmony. They intuitively sense what others want and instinctively adjust themselves to meet it. Their social antennae are so finely tuned that they often modify their tone, expression, or opinion before anyone even asks. At first glance, this seems like a gift, and in many ways it is. Extroverted feeling types tend to be compassionate, empathetic, diplomatic. They make excellent friends, partners, and caretakers. But when taken too far, or when this trait becomes unconscious, it turns into a quiet self-erasure. Instead of asking, "What do I believe?" they ask, "What do you want me to say?" Instead of feeling safe in their own identity, they feel safest when they are being approved of. Their self-worth becomes entangled with their perceived usefulness. If they're not pleasing, serving, or smoothing things over, they feel invisible, maybe even unlovable. But the danger is deeper than just overgiving. Over time, this pattern replaces self-awareness with performance. The individual begins to lose touch with their own opinions, needs, and desires, not out of malice, but out of habit. They've been so focused on how others feel that they've forgotten how to feel for themselves. They may stay in draining relationships because they don't want to hurt someone. They may say yes to obligations that exhaust them because they fear being seen as selfish. They may even defend beliefs or values that contradict their inner truth simply because it maintains peace. And worst of all, they often don't even realize they're betraying themselves. Why? Because the praise keeps coming. The gratitude, the sense of being needed. It feels like connection, but in reality it's often codependence in disguise. But no one, not even the most caring soul, can survive by living through other people's expectations forever. Eventually, this emotional contortion leads to burnout, resentment, or even identity crisis because beneath the surface-level harmony is a growing ache. If I stopped being useful, would anyone still choose me? It's a terrifying question, but also a liberating one, because the answer isn't found in becoming more agreeable or needed. It's found in learning to choose yourself, even if that means risking discomfort, conflict, or rejection. Real connection is only possible when you're not performing. And real peace comes not from keeping everyone happy, but from being true to yourself even when it's hard. So if you resonate with this, if you feel like your worth is tied to how likable, helpful, or pleasant you are, know this. You are not loved because you please people. You are loved best when you are real. You can silence your voice, hold back your opinions, and shrink yourself for years. But eventually something inside you will rise, not with words, but with symbols, symptoms, and dreams. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious never stays quiet for long. When you live out of alignment with your truth, when you deny who you are in order to preserve an image, your psyche doesn't just accept it. It responds, and it doesn't argue, it disrupts. You might begin having dreams you can't explain, intense, strange, or recurring. You might dream of being chased, of being naked in public, or trapped in a place you can't escape. These aren't just random flickers of the imagination. In Jungian psychology, they're messages from the unconscious, trying to reach the part of you that has been buried beneath performance. Being chased often symbolizes your avoidance. Something in you is demanding to be confronted. Feeling exposed could point to your fear of being seen without the mask. Being trapped reflects how your soul feels in the life you've constructed. Functional but not free, but it doesn't stop at dreams. When symbolic language is ignored, the unconscious moves to the body. Suddenly you can't sleep, your chest feels tight. You're exhausted even after resting. You have physical pain that no doctor can quite explain. Jung believed the psyche and soma, mind and body, are deeply intertwined. So when your truth is suppressed, the body becomes its final messenger. Even your behaviors begin to shift. You scroll endlessly on social media, not because you're bored, but because you're avoiding silence. You binge, overspend, overcommit. You tell yourself you're fine, while your nervous system begs for a different life. All of it is your unconscious trying to say you've strayed too far from who you are. It's time to come home. This rebellion of the soul is not your enemy. It is your rescue mission. But most people don't see it that way. They treat their anxiety like a flaw, their insomnia as a nuisance, their dreams as nonsense. In doing so, they miss the deeper truth. Your psyche isn't punishing you, it's protecting you. It's showing you the cost of living in contradiction, and the longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes. The good news? You don't have to decode it all at once. Start by paying attention to the restlessness, to the dreams, to the things you avoid, to the moments when your body tightens or your chest sinks. They are not problems to be fixed. They are invitations to remember. Remember who you were before the mask, before the role, before you confused being accepted with being loved. The unconscious won't let you forget forever. It will whisper, then shout, until you come back to the truth. You are not meant to survive life pretending. You are meant to live it fully, as you are. There comes a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when the mask begins to crack. Maybe it's after a sleepless night, or during a conversation where you hear yourself saying things you don't believe. Or perhaps you just wake up one morning and realize you've become a stranger to yourself. This is not a breakdown. It's not failure. It's an awakening. Carl Jung believed that true healing doesn't begin when we fix what's wrong. It begins when we stop pretending everything's okay. The persona, the social mask, has served you. It helped you survive. It earned praise. It allowed you to belong. But it cannot give you peace. Because peace doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being true. This moment, this inner fracture, is sacred. It's the soul reclaiming its voice after years of silence. It's the first step in a lifelong process Jung called individuation. The journey of becoming whole. Not perfect, not polished, whole. Individuation means facing the parts of you that don't fit the role you've been playing. It means grieving the time you lost pretending to be someone else. It means honoring the voice inside that was never loud, but always honest. And yes, it means disappointing people. It means saying no without apology. It means stepping away from admiration, if that admiration was earned through self-betrayal. This path is not glamorous, it's not quick, it's often lonely, but it's the only path that leads you back to yourself. You'll lose some things, your image, your status, the sense of control that came from people-pleasing, but what you gain is immeasurable. You gain your clarity, your depth, your ability to breathe without permission. You gain the strength to say, I may not be what others expect, but I'm finally who I am. That moment, when you choose truth over approval, soul over image, is the turning point. You stop being a projection and start being a person. And here's the paradox. The more you become real, the more the right people will find you, not because you're useful, but because you're alive. So, if this video stirred something in you, a memory, a feeling, a quiet yes in your chest, don't ignore it. Write it down, speak it aloud, take a single step toward the truth that's been waiting for you all along. Because as Jung once wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that journey starts now.